Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where pharmacists can fill your pet's prescriptions, helping you pamper and protect your pet with pills, peanut butter, toys, and treats. Stop into the store today or visit Safeway.com.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
This cloudy and wet day across much of Colorado is perfect weather for a board game. Monopoly has a new Colorado Springs edition. Instead of Boardwalk and Park Place, you can try to buy up Garden of the Gods and Pikes Peak. There's another Monopoly based on Denver, released back in 1996. I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, would Ubers be safer for drivers and passengers if every single ride was recorded on video and audio?
They're going to make better choices about how they act and the things that they say.
We'll break down the proposed new rules. Also, the bugs are back in town and could become a big problem for our forests.
You know, I remember my summer camp up near Granby having all of its lodgepole pines killed by these beetles, and eventually they had to be clear cut.
And your last chance to get up the mountain like this.
That thrill when it picks you up and just whoa! And then you're really going for a ride.
It's Friday, April 4th. Here's the news in Colorado today. By this time next year, if you take a ride share like an Uber or a Lyft, your driver could be required to record video and audio of the ride, and they may no longer be allowed to offer you water or mints. Those are just a couple of the changes meant to increase passenger safety that are part of a proposal at the state capitol. CPR's Benta Birkeland listened as the bill got its first hearing yesterday. Benta, if this bill were to pass as it's written, Colorado would have the strictest passenger safety requirements in the nation for rideshare companies.
This is certainly something backers want Colorado to be a leader on and at the forefront of trying to increase safety for passengers. And as you mentioned, this bill would not allow for food or drink, presumably so drivers couldn't spike beverages and harm passengers. It also includes background checks every 6 months and limits people with felony convictions from driving. It also aims to crack down on account sharing, and that's when a driver who picks you up isn't the driver who's actually registered with Uber or Lyft, so people can sell their accounts or let other people use them, presumably people who may not pass a background check.
How did this proposal come about? I know you've been speaking with the bill's sponsor.
It came from a very personal place for the sponsor, Democratic Representative Jenny Wilford. Last year, she said she was out with friends and she took a Lyft home to Thornton. And she said the driver sexually assaulted her as she tried to get out of her car. And this was just steps from her own home. Her husband and kids were inside. And she's suing Lyft over their safety policies. And this incident really prompted her to work on the legislation. And she said, in her case, for instance, there's no video or audio to corroborate anything.
It's unfortunate, right, that what happened to me happened and it's something that I have to live with. But I also think that if I'm able to use the pain that I am living with to ensure that other people don't have to go through this, then that's a win for everybody.
She believes that having audio and video can also improve behavior inside a Uber or Lyft and provide that record.
If they determine that something more than likely happened, then they are expected to ensure that that driver is deactivated in perpetuity. And if the driver disagrees with the decision, they can appeal that, and there is a process that is outlined.
Supporters include the AARP and the Colorado Women's Bar Association.
These are some significant changes proposed for rideshare companies and for their drivers. What do they think about this proposal?
The companies oppose the bill. They do say that safety is fundamental, and they have policies in place and features aimed to protect drivers and riders. I talked to Lyft, and the company says it has a dedicated around-the-clock safety response team, and they partner with a security firm to aid in emergencies, as well as ongoing background check procedures.
I can definitely see some trade-offs inherent here between public safety on the one hand and privacy on the other.
Yes, I imagine there are passengers who don't want to be videotaped. And then there are questions about who can access those recordings, who stores them, how long are they stored, who pays for it. The sponsors want the companies to pay for it, but do they pass that cost down to drivers?
So what's next for this bill?
The bill passed its first committee hearing with a wide margin, but it's at the very beginning of its legislative journey. There are still a lot of steps, including the full House chamber and then over to the Senate. But at this point, what I heard from lawmakers in that first hearing was very widespread support for this policy.
We know you'll be following this. Thanks, Benta.
Thanks so much.
An insect the size of a grain of rice can destroy entire forests and is making a comeback in Colorado. The mountain pine beetle is known for infecting trees and turning green mountainsides the color of rust. In a new report, the Colorado State Forest Service says the notorious beetles are spreading rapidly once again, and it could leave the mountains uglier and more vulnerable to wildfires. CPR's climate reporter Sam Brash joins us. Sam, pine beetles are native to Colorado. So if we've had them in our forest for a long time now, how do they become a problem?
That's a great question. So mountain pine beetles kill trees to reproduce. Healthy trees can usually fend off these infestations, and that means these beetles usually target sick or older trees. So the reason we're now seeing new outbreaks in Colorado is that whole forests are stressed, leaving them vulnerable to this particular pest.
So more trees under stress, and why is that?
The really simple answer is climate change and the weather. When it's hot and dry, trees are stressed out and they just have a harder time fighting off these beetles. Dan West is an entomologist for the Colorado State Forest Service, and he says recent conditions over the last few years have really primed forests for another pine beetle outbreak.
I'm a little bit concerned moving into this summer because, we just haven't had any precipitation save for this last little bit that occurred over the last few days. But for the most part, it was just bone dry, certainly up in the northern sections.
How fast have pine beetles been spreading recently?
So to answer that question, the state conducts annual aerial forest surveys. And since 2020, it's seen the area impacted by that particular insect increase by about 18 times over. Now, that might sound like a lot, but it's still much smaller than the last time we had a major issue with pine beetles.
And when was that last time?
That was not long ago at all. I grew up here in Colorado, and in the 90s and 2000s and 2010s, I remember my summer camp up near Granby having all of its lodgepole pines killed by these beetles, and eventually they had to be clear cut. In total, these beetles impacted 4.1 million acres of pine forest in Colorado. That's 80% of all the pine forests in the state, and we are nowhere near those levels right now.
We can hope for a lot of rain. Is there anything that we can do on our own to protect against another outbreak now?
At the small scale, absolutely. So if you're a property owner with trees, you can hire people to spray against the beetles. Wes also said there's some new innovative treatments with chemicals that might actually disrupt how these beetles communicate with each other. All of this gets a lot harder when you zoom out to the scale of entire forests. Protecting trees at that level requires tons of coordination between governments and private landowners to thin trees and apply any other targeted treatments. And Wes says it's all ultimately a really brutal calculus. The more dry, warm weather, the more beetles and other pests are going to impact Colorado's forests.
A concerning development for sure. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Colorado ski areas are starting to close for the season. This weekend, you can get your last turns in at Crested Butte, Wolf Creek, and Keystone. Most of the other resorts close at some point in April. Of course, that does not include Loveland and Arapahoe Basin. They plan to stay open at least into May. This weekend also marks the end of an era for the oldest operating ski lift in Colorado. The folks at the Sunlight Mountain Resort near Glenwood Springs threw a party for it. CPR's Stina Sieg was there for the celebration. Stina, can you tell us about this lift and how was the party?
Oh, man, the party was fun. So the Segundo lift, some people call it Segundo, it's been running for 71 years. So literally lifting generations of skiers and boarders up the mountain. It's a two-seater with a center pole. This is a really old-school design. It kind of looks like an erector set going up the slope. And at Segundo Day, people were happy to celebrate, but they were still sad to say goodbye to this piece of history.
What were those goodbyes like? What did they want to say?
Well, the word that kept on coming up was bittersweet. And that's how Bailey Lepig felt. She was there with her buddies.
The number of times that I've lost a ski getting on Segundo and had to have like an 8-year-old carry it up behind me. And it's just like, it's just part of it, Like, that's what I love about Segundo, and that thrill when it picks you up and just whoa! And then you're really going for a ride. It's like
pitted?
Exactly. But just getting on the lift, nowhere else do you have that experience. Just getting on the lift
In Colorado, and we love it.
Oh my, it sounds frightening.
Oh, yeah, it is. And the thing is that it does not slow down as it picks you up, so it just feels so fast when it hits you. But the thing is that it's actually pretty slow, and you could hear Bailey's friend back there kind of trying to say this is the slowest lift in Colorado, which is not true, but it is really slow. It covers less than a mile in 12 minutes, which is about the pace of an elephant on a leisurely stroll.
That's also about my jogging pace.
Yeah, mine too. I also talked to Mike Ferguson, who's been a ski patroller at Sunlight for 20 years. He talked about how Segundo was first installed in Aspen in 1954, so it might have carried the likes of Gary Cooper or John Wayne.
Yeah, that's the beauty of, that as you go, I wonder who was on here before us. Who was here,
In 1973, Segundo moved to Sunlight, and I talked to Emily Ibsen. She was holding her baby, Oakley. And Ibsen says that Sunlight has this real family charm.
While it's being progressive and moving in a great direction, we're going to miss kind of the rinky-dink nature that is the Segundo lift.
The end of the rinky-dink nature. What's next for Segundo? I assume there's a replacement coming?
Yeah, so there is a newer, faster chairlift that will replace Segundo at the end of the season. Another Sunlight lift called Primo will also be replaced by a quad. And these chairs, they're not just going to disappear. Sunlight's going to sell them off, which means that people around town will be able to put a Segundo chair in their garden or on their porch.
So for folks who want to experience Segundo one last time, how long do they have to do that?
Not long at all, but happily, Segundo will spin both Saturday and Sunday, closing at 2 p.m., closing day Sunday.
Another chance for a memorable experience. Thanks, Dina.
Thanks, Bazzi.
Thanks for listening to Colorado Today, and thanks also for your support of nonprofit local news. To donate, find a link in the show notes. And remember to tap follow on Colorado Today in your podcast app. Have a great weekend. I'm Bazzi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where teachers can save 5% every day. Download the Safeway app and verify your teacher status for exclusive offers and discounts. Get started at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.